Welcome to the Acknowledge to Action podcast, where we explore the journeys of service, transition, and personal growth. I'm your host, Matthew Benko, and today's episode is a special one. Not only are we diving into an incredible story of resilience and purpose, but we're also approaching the 1-year anniversary of this podcast, an important milestone in our mission to bring real conversations that matter. In this episode, I'm joined by Dave Swarts, a former Navy SEAL who takes us through his journey from the moment he decided to join the military to the challenges of BUD/S training to a career that was shaped by defining moments like 9/11. But beyond his military career, Dave's transition to civilian life brought its own set of challenges, leading him to discover a new mission, helping others find healing and purpose through community and connection. A key focus of today's conversation is something we talk about in every episode, post-military M.E.P.S.: mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual well-being. Dave's experience highlights just how critical these pillars are in navigating life after service. Now through the Trident Table, a nonprofit dedicating to supporting Navy SEAL and Gold Star families, he's using culinary arts as a way to bring people together, foster resilience, and create lasting impact. So whether you're a veteran, transitioning service member, or someone looking for insight on overcoming challenges and finding purpose, this episode is for you. Get ready for an inspiring conversation with Dave Swarts right here on Acknowledge to Action. Dave, thank you so much for being here on the Acknowledge to Action podcast. This is really great to connect with you. Really look forward to having our conversation here today.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Oh, this is great. Well, you told me behind the scenes a little bit. Spoiler alert, this is your first podcast. So I'm really honored to be the first podcast host for you. So this is going to be fun. You have a really cool story and a really cool background. And we're just looking forward to pull back the layers for you to talk about the moments you want to highlight, talk about some of the challenges and where you are now with everything.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Wherever we want to start off, man, I'm sure I'll just send it.
Cool. So you're a Navy veteran. You're in the Navy SEALs for the majority of your career. Can you talk about how you got into the Navy, where it started, how it all started, and the motivation behind becoming a Navy SEAL and that path?
Yeah, it's kind of funny you bring it up like that because, I think it was probably like my either senior or junior year in high school. Like, as I got older in high school, like the thing I became passionate about was fixing cars and automotive performance. So I was in auto shop. So it's like the last half of the day of high school or something. You're in the shop. So at one point that came to be like the only place I showed up to, as I had other interests there. But I remember the recruiters coming into the military for the military, and I don't know why, I just never thought about it really too much before. So the Marines come in, they're like, "Hey, do you want to join?" They give you their spiel, and I'm like, "All right." So I'm like, "Cool, I'll go into the Marines." Not really thinking about anything else, and I got like the runaround, and then it was just like, "All right, Army." The Army was next for me to kind of like process and think about, and that's actually where I took the ASVAB because I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go." Like, I didn't really know too much about like special operations. I'm not even sure if I even knew what a SEAL was at the time. The only thing I knew was growing up watching Rambo and Commando. So Green Berets and Army Special Forces or whatever was the only thing I even knew about. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go in the Army and do a bunch of cool stuff. Took the ASVAB, and then they gave me this long runaround. And somewhere between that and I think about, man, it's had to be like a couple months, like probably like 6 months or so between like figuring out, hey, am I going to go in? Am I not going to go in? Am I going to figure it out? I was like, I learned about like the SEALs and other special operations forces. And I'm like, whoa, like this is probably the toughest thing that anybody could ever go do, which it was. Right. So, so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go be a SEAL. I'm going to try and go get in the Navy. And it was literally like as some kind of weirdly situation between me and some of my friends. They're like, "Hey, man, we're going to the Navy," and I'm like, "Really?" They're like, "Yeah, 2 weeks from now, we're leaving." I was like, "You know what? I'm sick of like everything here and what I'm doing, and I need to get away." And I literally went over to the Navy office with my buddies and was like to the recruiter, I'm like, "Hey, man, I want to go and I want to be in the SEAL teams." And he's like, "When do you want to go?" I'm like, "I don't know. Can I go with these guys?" And he's like, "Well, let me figure it out." And
Yeah.
literally, like, that's how it went for me. I'm like, I want to be a Navy SEAL. I want to do the hardest thing that I could challenge myself with, and I want to join the Navy. And it was like literally 2 weeks later, I'm filling all my stuff out and I'm getting ready to go to M.E.P.S.S.
Yeah. Wow. So it was a combination of a line of sight and you acknowledging like, hey, I need to do something, create this opportunity and move forward from your, being in high school and taking that next step forward.
Yeah, I mean, I skipped a few things there. Like I didn't graduate high school, and I went back for like a fifth year,
Okay.
and I was like this isn't working out. Like I was just kind of like past that point in life where I'm like I'm an adult now. I'm turning 19, and I'm like I just need to like get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
I had a lot of like friends and other people that were just involved with like drugs and other things, and like I don't I just saw like the looming like what am I going to do with myself if I don't leave here now? I don't know what I'm going to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was
It's interesting how our experiences put us in a position to do something about our circumstances. And that's really kind of like, why, well, no, it's not really. It is why I call this the acknowledge act. Like you acknowledge, like, I have to do something. And that something was the military and proceeding forward to better yourself and get yourself on a path that sounded like, and I'm interested to hear that was more sustainable and was better for you.
Yeah, I mean, a few different things came to mind as well. I was like, I don't know if I wanted to go to college.
Yeah.
I literally didn't know what I wanted to do as like a career or, as an adult. Like I had like hopes and things that I liked, but I'm like, here it is. I could join the military, get money for college, and have at least the next 4 years to figure out what the hell I'm going to do when I grow up.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't figure that out until I retired out of the military, but I'm still trying to do that every day.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, it's one hell of an access point to figure it out. And it may not be the most comfortable, easiest way, especially the path of a Navy SEAL. I mean, it doesn't get more challenging than that. Uh, but it puts us in a position to gain those access points and figure it out and just really kind of put it all together, because as we get more into your story, it's pretty really cool how you took those experiences, and I'm curious to hear that motivation, how one, what led to, because you retired from the Navy, right?
Yeah,
So,
20
so,
years.
so, and when I say the majority, say like, did you go in as a SEAL? Like, did it go in? Did it go as according to plan? Like you said to the recruiter, I want to go be a SEAL team operator, and then boom, it just fell into place that way.
Well, I mean, I think like most people that come in the military, that's like the division point. You come in with an expectation, something that you want to do. You talk to the recruiter, and either one, I mean, I'm not saying to most people, but from what I've heard, they either like slightly didn't tell the full truth about
Mm,
whatever job or program you're getting into. And that might just be because they didn't know about it or they were just trying to hit a recruiting number. But so I showed up just for my experience to M.E.P.S. and was like, hey, I want to be a SEAL. Can you get me that? So I was coming in with not a high school diploma because I didn't graduate. I didn't get my GED yet. Um, so they're like, well, if we can't get you SEALs, because there was like a contract you could sign to
okay.
be a SEAL and go through the whole program. I just didn't know about it and I didn't ask for it. So they told me, pick another job. What else are you interested in? I said, I love automotive performance and mechanical stuff and working on cars. They're like, hey, how about being an airplane mechanic on F-14s? and all I could think about was Top Gun. And I'm like, yep, that's what
Yeah.
I want to do. If I can't get the SEAL teams from there. So going into boot camp is pretty much where it all started. There were opportunities to train, but not screen or get a buds package put in.
Okay.
And these are things that I didn't know about, or processes I never learned about. I mean, we didn't have. I mean, there might have been internet in 1999.
It was probably
I
still
don't.
dial up. It was probably like
Yeah,
AOL
it
dial up
was.
and
Yeah, that's right.
landlines.
That's right. So I mean, there wasn't cell phones yet either.
Yeah.
Other than those big car phone like backpack things. So for me, it was all right. I'm going to go in, and at least I think I'm going to figure it out at some point. So as soon as I got my orders and everything to boot camp, they're like, "Yep, you're going to A school. You're going to F-14. Mechanic,
Hmm.
A school in Pensacola and whatever." So I kind of figured that part out. Just not when I could get into naval special warfare or the SEAL teams. But excuse me, that was something I didn't know about or understand
Yeah.
yet. So, um, but long and the short of the story is went to boot camp, went to A school, asked and asked and asked, and finally, when I showed up to the actual command, um, I checked in on base to school Christmas Day of 1999. It was like A school, go home on leave, and they're like, "Hey, you need to check in no later than Christmas Day." I was like, "What?"
Oh, wow.
It kind of sucked, but
Yeah.
that was the beginning of, I guess, my naval career. Checking into a C school in Virginia Beach, and then they were like, "Yeah, your command's on deployment." So I knew in like 2 months I was also going to be flying out to the Middle East or wherever they were in the ocean to a carrier to join the squadron. So
Oh, wow. So how long were you at F-14 mechanic for?
yeah, so funny thing is when you want to go to a different program within the Navy or maybe the military in general, I have no idea. They're like, you owe us at least 3 years before we can release you to go do any kind of program or anything else.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So I owe
So,
them some time.
so you did it a couple years. So I'm interested in hearing how you maintain that focus and that discipline. I imagine I'm generally speaking, because I imagine once you get into your routine and comfort zones, not a my Air Force background. I was an aircraft mechanic before I went on to become a C-130 aviator. So I'm dialed into what the mechanic, what aircraft, the world of the aircraft mechanic, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really interested in hearing what you did to stay mentally focused and sharp to ready yourself for that opportunity when it presented itself. Because what you were saying, Dave, how you figured out along the way. It was just you were taking it day by day. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna become a Navy SEAL, but it just took you a little bit longer than I'd say, generally speaking, right? And you did the 3+ years or whatever it is. So I'm really curious to see what you had to do to keep yourself mentally focused, physically dialed, all that stuff that comes with showing up ready to go from day one, I imagine.
Yeah. I mean, so it was 99, like the end of 1999 when I showed up to the command there. And then I didn't really figure it out or realize until I checked in there of like, hey, there's a special program that I want to do. And they're like, you owe us 3 years. So right then and there, I'm like, okay, a little bit of a mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here's where I'm at. I'm a brand new sailor checking into a team, a command that's, everything to me is still just like eyes wide open, like, holy crap, where am I? What am I getting into? Um, so that was kind of where my mind shift shifted. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to put everything I have into this, figure it out, do good. While growing up, I'm like 19 years old when I
Mm-hmm.
checked in, maybe turned, next summer, I turned 20. Right. So, um, that's kind of just what I had to do, is kind of like shift my mindset to going like, hey, here's where my job is now, and I have to wait. So, it was like probably about 2 years later, after like a 4 month stint out on the ship, came back. They reset, the command, and then we got ready for another deployment. And I ended up doing like another full workup with the squadron. They do all their workup. They got to Fallon. They do their training, and then we deployed for like 7.5 months, which is around the time of 9/11. So, the story kind of has a couple major milestones for me. Is
Mhm.
I remember this like just like yesterday. Is it was September 11th, 2001. I'm on base there in Fallon, and I was actually talking to some other SEALs that I met. I ran into a bunch of guys that I ended up later befriending and getting to know better at Team 10. So I was in Virginia Beach, met some dudes there, and I'm training, swimming, hanging out with these guys. Just I'm trying to figure out more about the community, right?
Yeah.
And I walk into the coffee shop. I order coffee, and I'm like sitting there. They have this like big, huge, big screen TV, and I'm like, "Hey, man, what movie is this right here?" And they're like, "That's not a movie. That's the news."
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm like, started paying attention. I'm like, no shit, planes flying into Twin Towers in New York. And that was kind of like the moment where I'm like, hey, I'm back to getting my mindset about going to be a SEAL. My opportunity's close because my time's almost up, and they're willing to, let me put out a package to go. And that was kind of like the turning point of like those guys getting searched for. They left. I went right back to the squadron like that day after I saw that on the news because we all got recalled, and we ended up surging forward and doing a 7.5 month deployment. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, yep, when I get back, I'm going to continue training, and I'm going to put in my package and try and get a buds. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I did.
Wow, it is impressive how you're able to maintain that mindset, because we could get distracted for what I'll say is for the right reasons. We get
Oh,
in
I
our
did.
comfort zone, and but here you stayed the course and got dialed in, and didn't let like social, again, this is just what I'm thinking. I didn't
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
experience any of that, but like you get socially distracted, and it could sway you off that goal, that vision of going to buds, and that determination you made. And so it's impressive to hear how you stayed that course, and three, several years later, there you are, putting in that package, and then going on to be a SEAL for the rest of your career.
Yeah, I mean, the funny part is by the time I like got all the paperwork and did all my requirements and physicals and dive stuff and basically all the requirements to submit a package. I think I even had to go and do like the hyperbaric, the HAP stuff, to for jumping and stuff like that. You still had
Mm,
to get signed off by a dive, what is it, like a dive doctor or whatever. But the point is like I could say this now looking back because I'm like 45, but I was like 20, 21 years old. I
yeah.
mean, I got in trouble. I freaking learned the hard way. Getting a DUI, getting in trouble drinking, like growing up, in the squadron. But at the end of the day, I still had this thing that I wanted to accomplish. And
Yeah.
even though I was like growing up and pretty much fucking up, I still was able to get a package together, get it submitted, and it was it was like a full year or longer that it took me, because here it was summer 2003, and we got back somewhere in 2002. I think we got back from that deployment, but 2003 in the summer is when I submitted the package. I literally got orders, and they're like, yeah, in 2 months or 3 months or whatever, you're going to check into buds.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend at the time's like, she was excited, supportive, we were living together, and she's just like, what? you got orders of buds? I was like, hell yeah, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
We still tried to make it work. But the point is the squadron was leaving like the next week or the next 2 weeks when I checked out for a deployment. And that was actually the final cruise of the Enterprise, the aircraft carrier, the
Oh,
Enterprise, which is
is that what aircraft carrier you're on?
no, we deployed on the John C. Stennis, so I did 2 deployments on that with them. But the Enterprise was who they were going to deploy with then, and that was going to be the last deployment for that ship before they decommissioned it. Which is funny because my father, back in the day, helped commission the Enterprise,
Oh
so
wow.
it was kind of like a small historic family thing that I thought I was going to be able to do. But I was like, sorry, Dad, never made it on the ship that you did your career on. Well, I
Yeah.
should say your 3 to 4 years of career, I should say, in the Navy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was it.
Wow. So how did I'll call it prior service, how did those first couple years set you up for success to transition to the budget? And is that a common thing? And I'm asking out of general curiosity, like how many individuals, when you show up, are prior service or brand new to the Navy or a combination? Is it like, did that help you? Did it challenge you? Like, what was that dynamic like?
Man, all the above.
Okay.
I think any person that's done any time in the Navy, look, we call it the fleet.
Okay.
There's two different. I think there's two different sides to the Navy, at least, right? There's the fleet side. Well, then there's the aviation side, and then there's all these special programs that they're just slightly different. That you're not in the typical, I should say, Navy. So the Navy, the fleet is what I call all the people that like work the ships. They report to it, they live on it, they serve on a ship, and that's what I would say would probably be the toughest jobs in the Navy, right?
Hmm.
That's like, and it takes a pretty, I would just say, strong individual to like do a
Yeah.
career in that, because that's a job that I didn't want to do. So when you say, hey, what did I learn in the regular Navy? It was like I learned exactly what I didn't want to go back to.
Hmm.
So that actually was a benefit for me. I was like, and you're just grinding day in day out. Like in aviation, you when you're getting ready to work up, you're working 12-hour shifts, 12 on, 12 off. I'm not saying it's that difficult, but it's you know it's it's tough work. I mean, you're
Yeah.
out, rain or shine or whatever, 24 hours a day. These commands and ships, like you're either standing watch, you're manning some kind of post, or you're working on some kind of aircraft or something else. So for me, understanding what I was trying to go to, and all the cool, sexy shit that you hear you got to do, like jump out of planes, shoot guns, blow shit up, dive. I mean, for me, that was like what I grew up as a kid, like wanted to do, like be that cool dude. Like I said, watching like Rambo or Commando or Chuck Norris, whatever,
Yeah.
right?
You got that.
um,
What? Chuck Norris, Air Force guy. Got to give him some Air Force love, right?
that's right, man. That's right, right. Uh, but anyways, that was kind of what pushed me to go to Buds
Yeah.
and go like, I'm not going to quit.
Yeah.
You think about it maybe for a moment, like what would it look like if you did
Yeah.
not, for me, I was like, man, this sucks. What if I quit? And all I could think about is like all the people back in the fleet that were like, you're not going to make it. You're not
Mm.
going to do it. All the people that shed doubt because they didn't believe in themselves to try and, do something harder or do something greater or put their ego or pride on the line to become something better. Um, but for me, I was ready to, and I felt like I had to prove something to myself too.
That's it's. I think we've all. I think it's fair to say we've all experienced the haters and the doubters and those who aren't actively supporting you, and that may be more common than not. So hearing how you could turn that into motivation instead of like, oh, they're right. You're almost like, no, f that. I'm doing it. But most importantly, to prove to yourself that you can. But I think it's a nice little sidebar to like, well, see, that person who said I couldn't, I did. And that's, we could absolutely draw on that for the right reasons, for the right
Yeah.
motivation to empower us and to achieve those goals. So um, I hear that a lot. I mean, and I reflect on my experience. Like, wow, you hear about someone who cast doubt on you, or said no, you can't. It's like, well, watch me. It may not be in the moment. Like, what's that? Hold my beer. It's but more like, okay, acknowledged. I got this, and it's a different type of motivation than your um, motivational speaker type of motivation, right?
Well, I mean, think about it like this, and I can look back and say all this now, but what the biggest thing that I see in people lacking right off the bat is confidence, like
Mm-hmm.
self confidence, and I'm just a 19-year-old punk, 20-year-old punk, whatever, and I had something that I wanted to do that I knew that was like at that moment, I'm like, this is way out of my league, out of my reach, but I slowly took the steps. Um, I slowly took the steps to put myself in a position to where I can get closer and closer and closer to that goal of getting at least the opportunity. And that was probably the tougher part because the paperwork and the people I had to talk to and going out of my comfort zone to put in a package to like get to buds was it was what it was, man. It was convincing people to go also believe in me and get out and get that actual like get those orders to actually go and get picked up. So
Yeah. It's this thought came to mind as you're saying that is, um, not everybody wants to see you succeed, but there are a lot of people who enjoy see failure and see you not make it, because like you mentioned earlier, Dave, how their own
that sucks.
shortfalls or their own experiences led them to kind of have that sort of like negative, call it stinking thinking sort of thing, um, stinking thinking sort of mindset, and it's
Yeah.
they're just there waiting to see you fall. And like, yep, yeah, that makes them passively, subconsciously, and I'm not giving them a free pass, but it makes them feel better versus somebody. And it's rare to find somebody who's like, look, like, and maybe this did happen, like the Dave, hey, like you're gonna do it. Why? Because you can. And I'm here. It's rare that I think it's not common to get it that direct and have that, like, that person in your corner who wants to see you succeed no matter what.
You helped me realize something too. Is like the one thing I found out, you know, is I was like, hey, I was in the Navy a little bit. I'm showing up to buds. I think I know some shit. I was quickly reminded and humbled
Mm-hmm.
that nobody gives a shit. They're like, you're here to shut up, do what you're told, and learn. And that was a quick lesson I figured out right in the beginning as well. Because what we're saying is like most people think they know what they want or what they're ready
Mm-hmm.
for. But when you like open yourself up to what is it, vulnerability and opportunity, you quickly find out like, hey, what you do know and what you don't.
Yeah.
And for me, I was just like, I showed up. People are like, oh, I wear this uniform. I'm like, oh, I'm good. I've been in the Navy a little while. I could wear my, other uniform. And, quickly reminded, what are you doing? What are you
Yeah.
wearing?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm like, shit, am I going to get kicked out or something? They're like, nah, I had to like write, I don't know if it was 1,000 times or a couple hundred times of what being in the right uniform really meant or
Yeah.
whatnot. But,
Yeah. What what was, so you did that for the majority of your career? You became a SEAL team member, and you became part of that. Is it fair to say like the operations community? Like you were an operator for the majority of your career in the Navy.
yeah, 17 years of it. 3 years I worked in aviation for a little bit. So,
Well, anything we do consistently for 20 years is a milestone, but especially in that world, right? 17 years. What did you do to be successful in that and to get that career out of it and to be able to do it for 17 years, successfully and to retirement?
That makes it sound a lot easier than it was.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what. So going into Buds was one thing.
Mm-hmm.
You showed up. You had to meet the standard. At a minimum, you had to meet the standard.
Okay.
But you were trying to exceed it at every cost at every corner. I mean, I showed up to Buds, and they're just pretty much to say it, fucking studs.
Yeah.
Guys that were like, college athletes, swimmers, runners, football players, all this stuff. I did none of that stuff, man.
Yeah.
I didn't, I tried playing a little bit of football in high school, well, junior high before, like, I wasn't focused on my grades and that ended. But I didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I worked out a little bit. I did my own thing, but I quickly realized as well that a lot of those guys that were like the fastest and toughest looking dudes were also the loudest and obnoxious guys that also quit immediately when things got tough.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a entitlement thing or like because everyone had their excuse if they quit or got hurt or something like that. But I learned very quickly, like, I had a lot more work to do to compete. So I got faster. I got at swimming, running. I don't know if I got stronger or not, but I was able to keep up with everything and all the stuff. But, where I'm going with that is that Buds was tough. You got stronger, faster, better. But when you got to a SEAL team, it's it's way harder.
Yeah.
Because not only do you have to perform and take all the basics and a slightly advanced basics, I would say, from Buds and SEAL qualification training, but when you get to a team, you now have like a whole command, 20 people in your platoon looking at you, counting on you, judging you every single day.
Yeah.
Your reputation, your how you handle yourself under pressure, how quickly you learn and pick things up and perform and apply it. Like from like getting taught something in the classroom, walking through it out in the field, and then immediately implementing it. Under an operation, obviously training operation, and then ultimately real world. But that it was just tough. Like it's hard to explain it to somebody unless you've experienced it. But it's like going through academy to be a police officer, and then you're on the police force. In like the worst environment imaginable. It's like night and day. Controlled environment to like who knows what the hell's going to happen.
That's the side of the story that a lot of us don't hear. It's like because there's so much out there as far as like Buds and what you have to do to get through that controlled environment, like you said, to get. But then it's like a whole nother level of, all right, I'm assigned to a squadron, I'm on a team now, and then the expectations just are, you can't even measure like what's the metric for that expectation at that point. And to be able to do that, whether as a brand new team member, getting through all your training and then becoming operational and then doing that for 16 plus years, it's a loaded question, but it's hard. I mean, we could be here for hours to talk about what resiliency is and the difference between endurance and enduring, because I think there's a difference between that. But like, you endured in a sustainable way that I could only imagine what that meant for your teams and your career and all the things that come with, special operations and all that. So that's, I always find that interesting to anybody who does a 20-year career in the military, whether it's, in the fleet or in special operations. It's a commitment. You going back to what you said earlier, like how people do that in the fleet and on the ship, that's something in and of itself, because of the lifestyle and the sacrifices and adjustments. And then to do it as a special operator, it's a whole different dynamic, and it's what we embrace and what we want to do. And it's interesting how we look back on things and we could assess our why we did it, and inventory and all that. But in the moment, it's like, I'm here, I'm doing it, and I'm just taking it day by day as far as what I need to do to adapt, to learn, to be the best I can be. And when we're able to acknowledge that and identify that, like I kind of like it's half joke. If we could take the power of acknowledgement and package it and put it on a shelf for, here, not take this, but here, this is the key to success. Acknowledge to action. That doesn't exist. It's all unique and organic to our respective situations, whether through experiences, through guidance, and all that other stuff. So that, I'm hearing your story. It's really cool to hear that, because we could draw on that. We don't have to be a Navy SEAL to appreciate what you did. It's like, no, this is what Dave did. He made a goal. He stuck with it, and he crushed it. Right. And we could apply that to so many different outlets of our life.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. Like, I'll say when I went through Buds and became a SEAL and stuff, I was a cocky, entitled, young dude, right? Like, conquer the world. Like, look what I did. You know what I mean? But, it's the same as anyone else's journey,
Mm-hmm.
and you just pointed it out. And I think, sometimes I confuse that cockiness and with confidence with, setting a goal and accomplishing it.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know how to do that. Set a goal, go through hell and earth, and do everything that I needed to do one day at a time, because that was how I had to take it. Right? Like, I go to sleep, I wake up the next day, and I try and do exactly what I'm supposed to do to accomplish it and pass through that day. That's why a saying in the SEAL teams or Buds was, the only easy day was yesterday, right? Because yesterday's done and it's gone. Whether you failed or succeeded, or I should say learn or succeeded, now you have a new day in front of you to either change, make better, or now you have to pass that day as well. So.
Yeah. And we connected last week. I think it was like last week. You're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, and that's how we made our connection. You wrote something, you put a post that really like spoke to me, and I commented on it, and I think within, and I forget what the timeline was, but you responded to it in such a way that you gave me an access point to connect with you and to talk what was on my mind and how I related to what, your situation, what you put on LinkedIn spoke to me. I'm like, wow, like I experienced that, and I'm experiencing that in my own way. And you extending that olive branch to just like, yo, Matt, like, hey, let's talk, and I'll share what I said. I say, and I appreciate you using tactical vulnerability to allow somebody like me you never met before to connect and relate. And I couldn't relate to the specific objectives, what you wrote, but in a macro broad stroke way, I'm like, wow, I kind of went through that in my own way, and connecting with you, and then it's evolved into our podcast here. So I say all that and share all that because it's very interesting how we're able to connect, collaborate, and help figure things out in our own way, and where we draw inspiration from, guidance from, and all that. So I wanted to point that out because there's always a story behind how people connect via podcast, whether it's just through general internet connections or more of a, hey, you shared something, I connected with it, and we talked about it. The power of connection.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you're so like posting stuff and writing, man, is two things for me. One, it's outside my comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
but two for me, I feel like writing things down and getting it off my chest, whether I put it on a post or write an email or whatever and then delete it or something like that. I get it out there, and you're right, man. Like, dude, healing and all this other stuff, it's you can't do it on your own, and
Yeah.
that's a mistake that I see a lot of people make. Is they do these tough things, they go through lives, have these, whether it's trauma or they have these just moments of difficulty in life, whatever you want to call it. There's a word for it, but I'm missing it at the moment. But you know, you you can always gain some perspective, I should say, or a different angle of looking at something or dealing with something by, hearing someone else's experience,
Mm-hmm.
Or sharing yours. That one thing, that I love is helping people be successful,
Yeah.
sharing, having, you know, a play in, like, you know, someone else's, like, solving a problem or something like that. So for me, like, talking to you or hearing your story, it also brings up different ways of how, like, I recognize either bullshit that I've done
Yeah.
or things that I need to still deal with, that I pushed off, that I didn't, process. So it's a back and forth, and it's a cycle of, putting things out there and being vulnerable, right? That's the one thing that I think is really needed for growth as well, personal growth
Yeah.
too. So
All great points. And one of the reoccurring themes and what it's kind of evolved, what the Acknowledge to Action podcast has evolved to, is focusing on post-military MEPS. We talked, everyone who's went through the military went to the recruiter, went to MEPS, right? Military Entering Processing Station. But now, for me, I'm soon approaching retirement from the Air National Guard in a couple months, so I'm super excited. So I'm really getting dialed in for post-military MEPS, and for me, that's mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual. And you know how in the military, regardless of what branch, what we did, acronyms are a part of our life, right? And well, the SEAL, sea, right? Sea, air, land, right? So like we live and breathe acronyms, and so MEPS just kind of made sense. Post-military MEPS, I should say. So you've been out. How many years have you been out since you retired? Well, when did you officially retire?
I retired then in 2019, November.
Okay, so about five-ish, 5.5, 6 years.
I know, man.
Uh,
Time flies, man.
it does. That's what I've been hearing. It goes by quick. I'm mentally preparing in my own way. What has helped you manage that? Because we hear it a lot: readjustment, transition. I mean, there's a lot of different um, action words we could use. What has helped you manage that process, and because that was a significant part of your life, especially operating on arguably one of the highest levels you could in the military, and then it comes to a screeching halt with retirement, right? It's like, okay, that's it, regardless if it's a year out and we can mentally prepare for it, until you experience it. Going back to how you were talking about, like, buds, it's hard to, unless you experience, it's hard to explain. But when it comes to retirement, you hear about it, and then all of a sudden, boom, it's right there in your face. It comes to a screeching halt. And it's like, oh, dang, this is what it's about. What's that saying? The time to plan for a rainy day is when the sun is out. The sun's out, the sun's out. And all of a sudden it's raining and you didn't prepare for it. Generally speaking, for the sake of trying to help I say that to get some pointers from you to share with everyone listening, and I'll say selfishly say to help me with as I approach this retirement chapter in my life, and all those who are listening in their own way too, whether it's military, any closing out any significant phase in your life is a boom. That's how it's boom. And so how do we deal with that? What are some secrets to help?
Look, I don't have any, like, really good secrets. I just had what I did
Yeah.
and survived, and what works for me a little bit. But it's funny you say that, because the going into the military, I felt was like this, like, sprint, and then boom, I'm in, and I'm like, wow, I got 20 years if I decide to stay in. It's always this, like, countdown.
Yeah.
Of, like, hey, I got to reenlist, or hey, I got 2 years here at this command, and then I got to go figure out what else I'm going to do, and then 6 months of that's a deployment. But for me, that's how it went. I was like, I got my whole life ahead of myself, and then I met my wife. Then we have 2 kids, and next thing you know, I'm like, we're making a decision to like move cross country, to California and finish off my career. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm finally in the SEAL teams. It's great. Boom. Now I'm starting a family. Now I'm moving. And now I'm thinking about retirement,
Yeah.
which is which was wild for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like deployments, losing friends, all that stuff, man. So it goes back to what we were saying before about like it's all tough and complicated. It's not just simple. So what I did is, fortunately for me, there's a couple different transition programs, or I should say, 2 foundations that I worked with trying to figure what I wanted to do when I grow up. Because, like you said, here it is, my dream job, the thing I'm most passionate about, and the thing that was like, the shining light or star I was reaching for, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
um, you know, to start off my career and what my goal was. So now I'm like, what am I going to do next?
Mm-hmm.
And part of it was kind of shedding that identity, and how and who I was, as a SEAL, which is a very tough thing to do because here you are, no matter what industry or job or thing you're doing, when you're at the top of your game, obviously, you take a couple steps down and back up throughout it, learning, just through mistakes or growth. But like, I'm at the top of my game now. It's like, where do I go?
Yeah.
And the first thing I realized was, I don't think I'm just going to find this thing that's up here already that I'm just going to go walk over and transition to.
Yeah.
So that's where the Honor Foundation came in for me.
Okay.
They have a program. It was like a 5 month, 5 months, I think, when I went through in like 2018, of like a academic, um, transition and professional development. Uh, that's kind of the simplest way I can put it for it.
Yeah.
I learned academic stuff, about like, hey, if I wanted to go to school, or hey, getting a degree, or hey, what industry would this, that plan do? I had a coach, um, that was personal to me, and, another person that,
Hmm.
that dedicated their time. So it was also like these amazing people in industry, that I got access to. you know
Yeah.
it was a two-way street. I'm sure they learned maybe something from from us, military guys transitioning, but other than that, here I was with just a network of people and opportunity to kind of like pick and choose what I wanted to learn. And I'll just say, like, it was just nonstop cups of coffee and figuring out. And I would go from like one interview or looking at one industry to a job to a role, and at first it was like, I'm like, hey, I got to get out and figure out what kind of job title I want and what industry making a certain amount of money. Um, but by the way, that played no part in satisfying
Yeah.
my interests when I got out. But just to kind of talk back on the transition piece is, I also leveraged another foundation, SEAL Future Foundation, that a good friend of mine started that also helped with transition, specifically for SEALs, not just special operations, but just SEALs, and education and health and stuff like that. all those all that being said, and all those things available to me, it was still a struggle, man.
Yeah.
I was still looking for purpose. I was still trying to figure out my relationships and work through a divorce, getting out, you know, losing the opportunity to raise my children for half their lives, just because of getting a divorce and stuff like that. And, meeting new people and creating other relationships and figuring out, like, how am I going to do this on my own now? Like,
Yeah.
completely on my own. And then also dealing with like war crime, political stuff before I got out for about 2.5 years. That really played a huge kind of like question mark in my future.
Yeah.
Was I going to be able to retire?
I,
Or not? Was I going to have my benefits? Uh, Anyways, I'll leave it there for a second.
yeah, no, that was just because you bring up a lot of great points. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
at a really significant crossroads, dealing with multiple different variables, right? Personal, family stuff, wife, going divorce, um, you know, pending and upcoming, like, okay, I'm leaving the SEAL teams, but also because you brought it, you mentioned it, you're dealing with, operational, like, was it like a was it an Article 15? Like you're dealing with some like heavy stuff all at once, and it's regardless of how trained and how dialed in we are, it's okay to not be okay or to be overwhelmed, and it starts with acknowledging that. And it's tough though. It's incredibly tough, um, regardless of how tough we are, right? Regardless of how resilient we are, some days just, or some chapters in our life are just like, whoa, you look back on it. And that, honestly, Dave, that's what drew me to you on LinkedIn. Seeing that, I was like, wow, this Dave, man, like he has a story to tell. Uh, and my initial, it was, so I gravitated. I was like, man, because I'm going through my own, you know, thing, and I'm processing. I'm like, man, I got to
yeah.
talk to this guy if he's willing and able. So that I'm
Mm-hmm.
incredibly thankful for. And then hearing all that,
Absolutely.
because it sends a powerful message. I'll stop there because it's like I'm getting um, really motivated here. I like to talk when I get motivated, but um, yeah, dealing with all that really says something about that, and how you got through that. Because the long of it is you did retire, and that whatever you were going through, like you said with the Article 15, didn't compromise who you are, your character, and all that stuff, and you got through it.
Yeah, but the one thing it did is it brought, and it kind of brought up something that I think I might have said in that one post is, it taught me about stress
Mm,
and processing trauma and stuff as well.
yeah,
It made me very aware. I was dealing with things internally, I didn't share with like my wife or friends or at the time, or my kids. Every day I would go into work for probably the last couple years of my career, and I would just shove it away and kind of like try to maintain the status quo. Go to work, do my job, take care of my guys, um, provide top cover if I need to, and then try and go home and be a good dad and a husband. And, I was in denial on a lot of those fronts where I just wasn't, looking back at it, probably wasn't meeting the standard, as far as like priorities, so to speak.
hmm,
I felt like, all right, I can still go to work and bury this and not deal with it and then just be a team guy or something, not like address it or acknowledge it. It came out in different ways, probably where I may or may not have paid attention to certain things that I should have. Training and everything still went on as it needed to be, but, I'd go home and I would just try and, I'd either be drinking or something like that. And I'd go home, do what I had to do to complete the day. And I thought that was just kind of good enough. Um,
yeah,
but it wasn't, what I mean? And, the stress just did things to me like health wise that I just didn't understand, like why I was dealing with it or why I was acting that way. Being, whether it's irritable or like really short
yeah,
tempered, not like in a mean, angry way, but it'd just be like where I would be operating between like a 7 and a 10,
yeah,
to where it's like, I'm cool. Now I'm not cool,
yeah,
and it's hard to delicately deal with, family problems when when I have like no room, when I had like no room to navigate it, you know,
Yeah.
from a just like frustration perspective, you know, it's like, how am I going to work things out with my family when I have like this long road, you know, with the war crime stuff of like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I know where I was and what actually happened, but you know, it we're in court martial now, you know, exonerated back in 2012. And then here I am in like 2017, 2018, 2019, you know, reliving this. Yeah, and I might have put it in there, you know, it was like originally I was like, I got that dropped on me when I was fighting ISIS dudes in Iraq.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, holy shit, I got to go home now and deal with this crap. But I didn't know, I didn't really know how to deal with it, man. And that's where it was just like, I did realize to like leverage my network, leverage the people around me, share my story, be vulnerable, be open to other feedback and help. You know what I mean? And I think that's
I,
what people struggle with the most.
I do. And that's incredibly powerful. Being vulnerable like that, for you to self-identify that, because when emotions are high, cognitions are low. Right? It's a divergent relationship,
Oh yeah,
and you know, you know that from being an operator. Like, you're trained to just acknowledge that and compartmentalize it in the moment to carry out the objective, right? But when it's in our own personal life, it's hard to do that. And then I'm sharing some of my aircrew experience, being a
yeah,
seeing, you know,
yeah,
well, when we're flying and stuff like that, it's like, hey, we're trained to do X, Y, and Z. But then when you pull the layers back and you process it, it's so important, and that does take, I mean, bravery, vulnerability, and just being uncomfortable with yourself in uncharted. It could be uncharted territory. So for you to say that, Dave, it's we need more of that in our own lives in a tactical way. Because what was the name of the organization that would connected you with a coach? I'm sorry, I want to get it right.
the Honor Foundation.
Honor Foundation. You said, while you were saying what I picked up, where you're saying like it was an access point for you, and that is so. Sometimes access is like right there when it comes to transition assistant in the military. It sets us up. It gives us access points. Other times we have to go on a journey to find that access or to be ready for it. You know, sometimes we got to bang down the door of opportunity slash access as well. Sometimes it's a little bit of both. And that's what helps us go through the motions, what I call acknowledge, accept, process, plan, action. I mean, that's just a version of cognitive processing therapy, but that's going back to the world of acronyms. We need those to remind ourselves. And we could talk about core values, and there's core values are there for a reason. I know for me, it was kind of corny at first. It was just a word: integrity first, service before self, excellence in all we do. Air Force core values. Now they mean something to me, and I don't need to drink the Air Force Kool-Aid anymore because I'm retiring. But honestly, those it means a hell of a lot. Before, in basic, it was just like, yeah, just it was just words. So you were going through the motions, right? But
Yeah.
now they mean something now, or I get the value of them a whole hell of a lot more.
Well, I mean, that's the thing too. It's like you could just say those words, but until you equate something with an action or an emotion, you know, that you can relate to, you know, they are just words. But you know that's the thing, man. Is we take these experiences or
Mm-hmm.
opportunities, you know, and we align them with, you know, our own like whatever goals or words or mission statements, however you
Yeah,
want to, yeah.
to make it work. I know we're going on an hour and here, and there's so much good things to talk
It's all
about,
right.
but I really want to talk about and ask you about the nonprofit that you started, the Trident Table Foundation, right? You're the founder, board chair, and CEO of that. Uh, I just a little bit I looked into. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. And also the you're the founder of Dirty Frogs. really interesting name. Cool, interesting name. So, but between your nonprofit that you have, talk a little bit about that, because I have a sense that's a critical tool in your toolbox to help with your continued transition and readjustment, and as you continue this journey into the. Are we allowed to call ourselves civilians? The retirement sector.
I mean, for sure, man. We are. We're in the civilian community as well. No, I mean, he said dirty frogs. It's so, that was something, that was probably the first company I created for myself to do something. And
Mm-hmm.
for years, I've been like trying to find a partner or another company to help me do product development and get my barbecue rubs. So that's what that company represents. Is
Okay.
I'm passionate about cooking, and I was like, I'm just inspired by like other people and learning how to cook. That I'm just like, I'm going to make my own rubs. Well, for me, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And here we are 3 years later from when I actually started the LLC to like finally finishing up some of my product development, with someone where I can actually get these things manufactured. I'm sure there's like a ton of different ways to do it, and I probably could have done it a long time ago. But it just ended up like in my priority list, kind of shifting farther and farther away. Um, so I, like I said, I'm only getting it done now.
Yeah.
But Trident Table Foundation. So as I was just talking about a few other nonprofits, I've been involved. I've been a recipient. I've helped out. You know, and I wanted figure out my own way to be able to give back
Mm.
and be there for other guys, other girls, other families, and help them along the way and share, some of the things that I've learned or made mistakes on.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about what are some things I'm passionate about, because at the end of the day, like a lot of people, you can just start a company, right, on something random. Hey, I want to sell like cups or whatever. I don't know. I know that's a horrible, or guns or whatever. But if you're not like passionate about it, or you don't really care that much about it, there's nothing really going to drive you. And I think that's very true, because I thought of a bunch of different things to do, and at the end of the day, it came down to cooking and
Mm.
barbecuing, and that was something I became really passionate about after getting introduced actually from one of my friends. That kind of, I want to say, pushed me onto my like love for cooking.
Yeah.
Um, and specifically like barbecuing and smoking. I worked in a few restaurants when I was in high school, and I enjoyed cooking and stuff like that. But it really didn't kick in until about that point. But there I am. I'm like kind of walking my dog one day, and I'm like cooking. That's it. I'm going to
Yeah.
do a nonprofit based around cooking and culinary education and community. And the thing that pushed me to the next level with it was going like, you know, the one thing that I care about and care to do and try to do almost every night is have one meal with my kids,
Mm.
where I cook dinner every
Yeah.
night that I have them, or try to. I think I got a 90% success rate on that.
Yeah.
It's not always always lines up. When the kids are doing school stuff, but that's kind of reminded me of like that was where I was able to like come together with my kids. Everything goes away, and we're able to reconnect. And it
Yeah.
reminded me of all the times I would take trips, or I'd be deployed or whatever, and I'd come home and I'm like, how do I reintegrate with my kids and not mess up, the schedule and, their habits that they formed while dad was gone or when he's gone. And that was a way for me to like slide back in, break the ice of being back, and get those
Hmm.
moments to talk with them. So, one night at a time or one meal at a time or whatever, I realized the success I had in that. So that's what I wanted to do. And, we or I decided that it was going to be Navy SEALs and Gold Star families.
Mm-hmm.
So families of each. And why Navy SEALs is that's the closest community that I'm
Yeah.
close to, so to speak. So I can have immediate impact. I know what the guys and families are going through because I was one of them. And that's, where I wanted to start. And the Gold Star family piece is, from seeing the families rocked and destroyed by war and
Mm.
throughout my career. Um, that was another place that I definitely wanted to have an impact is Gold Star families, but that's across the board.
Yeah.
All military branches, not just SEALs. And that also includes first responder and law enforcement agencies.
Oh,
So
wow.
everything that serves our country and our communities, that suffered a loss like that, I wanted to be able to have the organization be able to support, and that's where we have a larger aperture. And the SEAL teams are the smaller aperture thing that we can focus on, that I'm closely connected to, because that's the other part is, we raise money, we bring in some sponsorships, you know, who am I going to give it to? Who am I going to be able to connect immediately with? And that's kind of we aligned it to that. I'll stop there for a moment if you want.
No, that sounds like an amazing access point. Just giving, connecting the community you're closest to and so incredibly well helps set that next person who's just acknowledging or struggling or is overwhelmed with their own circumstances that are similar to just having whether it's a short career or a full long-term career, right? It's a starting
Yeah.
point. It's an access point. And on the website, I like how I think it's really awesome how you focus on the culinary education, because culinary arts, right? Culinary arts. I think of that like arts is unique and specific to the creator, right? Whether it's a barbecue rub, like we have our own styles. Like you go to a chili cook-off, you're getting some cool variety of stuff based off the personality of the person, the spices and whatnot. I think the same applies for um, readjustment and dealing with transition and dealing with stress. It's an art. There's no set prescribed do X, Y, and Z, and you will accomplish reduce stress. It's unique and specific kind of. So I was, as we get to know each other better, and I'm learning the organizations that you run and have created, I'm like, wow, that's really cool, because it is an art. This managing stress, dealing with a military retirement, challenging times. I mean, we could go down the list of everything correlated to stress and challenges. It's an art. And I think it's really cool how the Trident Table Foundation, that's what it represents, just from what you're telling me and what I'm picking up. Culinary education, skill development, family bonding, resilience building, wellness, and holistic support experience. That's not all from memory out of cheat sheet. Full disclosure.
It's okay. But, see it on the website as well.
Yeah. So, but I that's pretty awesome. I just wanted to share those thoughts with you based off that, everything you're telling me, and what's accessible on the website and on your LinkedIn page and everything that you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and the veteran space the veteran nonprofit space is saturated.
Yeah.
But, for good reason. People get out and they're like, man, there is this, that. Like, we don't get this. There's nobody there to support. I mean, not saying the private or civilian sector has all that support. But, I think that's just something unique as we come out of the military. We're like, hey, life can be great. Life can be easy. Life can have a support system. You got to create it, right? It's not just there for you once you get out. But the bigger part of what we wanted to do is get people into those opportunities, to grow with their families, learning cooking, or have purpose and be able to bring value to your family through, like, a big meal, or smoking some ribs, or cooking some food. I mean, everybody wants to be a grill master. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's kind of what it was for me too. I was like, if I got people over and I'm cooking, like, I don't want to look like an idiot over here. I want to be able to, it's satisfying to cook something big and then have a bunch of people enjoy it. And they're like, yeah, that was good. And you're like, thank you. That was good.
Yeah.
Or whatever. But, it just shows it's just like another way to show your effort, right? Your work and effort paying off by bringing value to other people.
Your craftsmanship. I know that's probably not a word you use every day with food, but it is. It's a craftsmanship. It's a product of who you are and your qualitative nature. And more often than not, if not 100% of the time, you want it to be the best. Like you were saying back in buds and SEAL training, like you're always looking to exceed the standard, right? And there's a correlation to that between everyday life. Like I want this to be the best rack of ribs and whatnot, or whatever it is that we set our sights, whether it's a small family party, barbecue, or a formal event that you're catering, or any number of things. So I that's really cool. Yeah.
Well, I look at this, Matt. Like one of the things I didn't mention, but why it came to mind is, I'm passionate about cooking and grilling and stuff. But if you could think of one thing or something that you do that is effortless, that is not like, hey, annoying or whatever. Like I'll use the gym for instance. I go to the gym I'm a Monday through Friday guy in the gym. I like to take my weekends and leave them optional to rest or get things done. But like I'm committed enough to where it's like I'm up at 3:45 in the morning so I can get to the gym, work out, handle all my stuff, and I'm back getting ready to get my kids to school, and then it's off to work, right? Like that takes effort. And there are mornings I wake up and I'm like, no, I don't want to go. But I still do, right? Because it's something that I need to do. Cooking, for me, is something that I'm always trying to be better at. Every meal I make, everything I make, I'm trying to like take another part of it and make it better, But for me, it's not work. It's not. I don't look at it as in something that's getting in my way of anything else. It's something we need to do every day because it's sustainability.
Yeah.
You have to sustain yourself, I should say, with sustenance and eat and live and whatever, grow, depending on your goals. But so for me, that's why cooking. It's because I don't. Excuse me for a second. It's because I don't have to put like effort into it. You know what I mean? I have to put effort into it to be good at it because nobody wants a real piece of dry ass brisket. You know what I mean? Or when I'm smoking a turkey every year, like, most people do it in the oven. Like, dude, I brine it. I do all this other stuff just so when you eat it, you're like, not like I need to drown it in gravy and drink a glass of water with it just for it to go down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. So that's another reason why cooking for me is it's one of those things I'm just passionate about that. I don't know. I just do,
That's pretty cool. It's because it sounds like it was a talent for you at a young age, getting exposed to that, working restaurants and but you're now turning that talent into a skill set. And again, we could really go into detail about that, how like things that come easy to us arguably is a talent, but it's a whole another game changer when you take that talent and discipline yourself for it to become a skill set. And
it doesn't mean it's good, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It could be one of my bad qualities. Like, yeah, Dave, you cook a lot, and I know it's easy for you, but your food kind of sucks. I'm no culinary specialist, trust me, but I can get some things done.
That's pretty cool, Dave. This has been great. I appreciate connecting with you, sharing some stories with you, some information. This is now an access point for others to listen, to learn a little bit more about you, hear me a little bit, go on my things. But all seriousness, I'm looking forward to staying connected with you. Looking forward to seeing a Dirty Frog seasoning on the shelf at insert your
website's being built.
Okay. That's great, but you're on LinkedIn. I'm going to share the access point to the Trident Table Foundation so people can learn more about you, that foundation that you started, and all that. So Thank you. This is good. Thanks for trusting me. Thanks for trusting the Acknowledge to Action. This is we're approaching February is when it's been about a year. It's like I'm approaching the year anniversary. I think this is going to be episode 26. So don't hold me to that.
Congrats,
but
man. That's good.
Thanks. But I appreciate you trusting me. This has been a great for your first podcast, and I know. I say with confidence, there's going to be other podcasters, seeking you out as a result of this. So,
yeah, man, if we could share a story and help others, man, that's my goal.
Nice.
I don't just want to hear myself talk because I already just hear that all day anyway. So.
Well, I like hearing you talk, and I'm pretty confident those listening got a great message today. So
good.
The Acknowledge Action podcast has a playlist. It's a really good, I'm a little bit biased, but it's a pretty kick-ass music playlist. What song do you want to dedicate to the Acknowledge Action playlist?
Let's do 5 Finger Death Punch, IOU.
Okay. Nice. It's pretty amazing what you can get online with the click of a button. So that's going to be added to it. Thank you again, Dave. I look forward to staying connected, sharing your story out there and all that.
Absolutely, man. And we can sure use a lot of support, at Trident Table Foundation for sure.
Well, this is an access point for that. It's an incredible message, and those listening, it's a great worthy cause. So
awesome. Thanks, man.
All right.
What an incredible conversation with Dave Swarts. His journey from Navy SEAL training to building a mission-driven nonprofit is a true testament to resilience, purpose, and the power of community. As we near the 1-year anniversary of this podcast, his story reinforces something that we've explored in every episode: the importance of post-military M.E.P.S.S, mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual well-being. These pillars aren't just for veterans, they're for anyone navigating life's transitions and challenges. If there's one takeaway from today's conversation, it's this: you are not alone. The transition from one chapter of life to the next isn't always easy, but staying connected, embracing vulnerability, and finding purpose in the process, you can move forward with strength and clarity. Thanks for tuning in to the Acknowledge to Action podcast. Remember, no matter where you are in your journey, you are not alone. The path doesn't end here. Keep pushing forward, believe in yourself, lift others up, and cultivate strong, authentic connections. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and keep moving forward with the power of Acknowledge to Action. This is Acknowledge to Action.